I had a friend recently ask me about a common conundrum that he has. It's a question that a lot of people have when they start learning Hebrew or get really into the Bible and start making certain discoveries or coming to certain conclusions that they may feel alienate them from uh, their family members or the religious community that they find themselves in. The question being whether they should go through a conversion despite having certain reservations with uh, some aspect of the Jewish faith, or whether they should just associate with messianics, or go the noahide route. It's not a simple question to answer, and there's not a simple answer. I really think that there is a valid answer for different people in their different situations. I don't think it's a one size fit all. Although I personally am of the opinion, despite some people thinking my opinion may have changed, I am of the opinion that ideally a person would embrace the uh, the tradition of the faith of Israel, which I think is the same as the faith of Jesus. But not everybody is capable of living that lifestyle. Sure, maybe in theory, maybe with a ridiculous amount of self-sacrifice and family sacrifice, but the question the question is whether that's worth it and whether that's what they really want. And honestly, it is completely possible, and I think very often the case, as human population increases and cultures uh, interact with other cultures, that what may be an ideal standard is not necessarily the ideal for a person in their particular situation. It's the same situation you have with someone who is objectively incapable of having the standard physiological response to the opposite sex, i.e., they're either asexual or gay. Yeah, a husband and a wife is the ideal family structure to raise a child in, assuming both parents are healthy. But when someone is simply incapable, that is not the ideal for them because it's outside of the realm of their possibility. So, when it comes to your faith, if you're identifying with the Jewish faith, but you have reservations about the Jewish community, you're considering whether or not you should stay in a messianic community, or I don't know, maybe a Seventh-day Adventist or something along those lines, or a noahide option. You need to ask yourself, what do you personally, your convictions most align with? Never mind the particular reservations you have. Do you have more reservations with a certain church? Do you have more reservations with the Jewish group, with Islam? And if you find that you have reservations with all of these and you're not sure which, maybe you need to take a better look at the subsectors of these groups. In the case of my friend, I know that he most likely has more in common with the Jewish faith. I think he believes that Jesus is the Messiah. I don't know what all that entails for him. But if you think he's the Messiah, but you don't think he should be worshipped as God, in that case, I don't think that the standard messianic congregation is going to be the best fit for you. Although there are some isolated exceptions to that rule, I think your best bet will be in a Jewish community. I would need to know what the exact reservations are about, but I can tell you that although the Jewish world is relatively small and the Orthodox Jewish world is even smaller, there is still some degree of diversity, and I do think that you will more than likely be able to find a congregation that is a better fit for you than some other congregations. Whether it's that you want a more strict kind of community to live in, or more of a modern type of Orthodox community to live in, or maybe somewhere between the conservative Jewish community and the Orthodox Jewish community, what some people call conservadox. But that may also require relocating due to the unfortunate but obvious fact that the Jewish community is so small. So this is something you should really decide together with your spouse if you're married, or if you're not married, take into consideration other things, whether your job skill set will be marketable in the area that you want to move to that has the congregation that you think is best fit for you. And there's always the option of creating a small group or your own little community. But this is really much more of a viable option if you live in a major metro area. Someone who doesn't live in a major metro area, it's going to be exceedingly more difficult for you to make a small group. It's not impossible, but it will be a lot more difficult for you. You'll have to make a lot more effort. And if you have kids or plan to have kids, that's a big thing, because you don't want your kids to grow up feeling isolated and alone or feeling like weirdos. It's one thing to be Jewish and clearly feel that you're a minority in a metro area, but know that you're not the only minority of your type. That's different from being a minority of literally one in some very rural location where people have no idea what you even are. Like where I grew up, people know that Jews exist, but they really know virtually nothing about them, to the point that for the last 2 years I was living there, walking around wearing tzitzit and a kippah, I never had somebody ask me if I'm Jewish. I had plenty of people ask me if I'm Muslim. So you don't want to be that isolated. If you're in that kind of a situation, if you don't have a very outgoing personality and capable of tolerating people who are not going to see eye to eye with you on much at all, even, then you really probably do need to move if your convictions are so important that this is really a question that's nagging at you. Not to mention that usually in major metro areas you have more job opportunities in any case. And if you don't like metro areas, you can always move outside the metro area, but within reasonable driving distance. But living near a major metro area will open up your options greatly in this regard. Of course, there are people that are fine with less social interaction. But if you have kids, I'm speaking from my own experience, and although I'm kind of different in some ways, but most kids especially, they need social interaction, perhaps even more than adults do. You don't want your kids to grow up feeling like weirdos. It can create serious emotional and social difficulties in the future. So, yeah. Since I'm kind of answering without knowing the specifics of what the person's reservations are, and since this is a fairly broad question that's relevant to many people, I'm going to leave it at that. And dear friend, you know who you are. Get back to me and let me know what those particular reservations are, and then I'll talk to you more about that. Final note with regard to the noahide movement. If you want your children to grow up in the same faith as you, they need an established community. And there is not really a noahide community that's established in reality, in the physical world. There is online, but they are scattered and disjointed. You will have much more success in integrating into an Orthodox community, even with your reservations, than living just as a noahide without any community for your kids.